Hi, Alex. It's good to be with you with Poems by Post. My name is Dana Dajani. To all who don't know me, I am a spoken word writer and performer. I like to blend the genre of spoken word with theater to really add this theatrical dimension brought out by gesture and character and accent to really augment the pieces and bring them to life.
Well, amazing. Dana Dajani, thank you very much for coming to talk with us and for being our poet. I think you've got an awful lot of talent and very different style to actually what I'm used to engaging with when it comes to poetry. And so I found it really exciting, this journey of discovery I've been on with engaging with some of your work. I read in an interview somewhere that you are a born storyteller. So I was wondering if you'd like to start this by telling us a story.
Sure. Perhaps I'll start with a bit of the story of my own life to give you some context. I was born in Amman, Jordan in 1988, and my parents were living in the States at the time. So we went back to the States, and I spent the first few years of my life there until about the age of 7. And I would say that it was within this age I had already fallen in love with poetry and the written word and reading and performing. My mom really encouraged me to read. I had this like ferocious appetite for words. I would pick up the cereal box and the Kleenex box and like whatever was in front of me and just read. And so that lent itself well to being on stage. So I was the narrator in the school play in kindergarten, and I would say that's really kind of where my journey took off, not just in space around the world. We left the States, we moved to Jordan, then we moved to Saudi Arabia. After Saudi Arabia, actually in 2003, the compound that I lived on was bombed by Al-Qaeda. And so we were evacuated out of Saudi and we went back to the States, but we went to a new state that we hadn't been to before. We went to Kansas. And so all of that love of reading and writing and speaking that I had in my youth kind of came to my rescue after this traumatic event of the bombing, because that was the only way that I could get through my experience, was to write myself through it and to know myself through my journaling process and to just give myself that space, especially after being like uprooted from my friends and community at school in Saudi Arabia to Kansas, which is really such an opposite kind of end of the spectrum, cultural spectrum, and by virtue of this event that was really difficult to navigate. So that's kind of where I dove into, and it stopped just being something that I enjoyed like a hobby, but writing became my own coping mechanism and my own healing mechanism. And so I started to write poetry then, and I also started to write short stories. And there was a literary magazine in my school, and that was like an amazing platform for me at the time. And it was then that I realized like I need to go to school for theater. My parents really wanted me to pursue business or engineering or language. And for me, it was clear like nothing gave me the presence of mind of being here now as I felt like on stage performing. And there were many other things that I was good at, but nothing gave me the return, of as much as theater. So I decided to go to school for theater, and there was a lot of challenges within the family dynamic, and I really left my family for some time. But if I had multiple paths that I could pursue, I'd give one to you and one to me, but there's just one life I'm living, so I've got to give it my shot, And eventually over time they came around, and I did graduate with a BFA in theater. And so that really brought all of this like storytelling. It really filled it out in the body. As we're talking before the interview, like I study something called the Feldenkrais Method, and this is something that I came to through theater school. and giving me more, grounding and presence in the body. But you learn about the voice, and you learn about the mind and the emotions, and these are all your tools as a performer. And actually, these are your tools as a human being. So I felt like theater school was like essential human training. And yeah, here we are.
Wow. I mean, that's a very glittering, I suppose, experience, like a tapestry of experiences, sort of in your past that have helped to shape you, define you, and push you. Where you've used writing, as you say, as a coping mechanism, as a way to escape. And I mean, what a colourful history. I mean, of course, not all positive. Like going through a bombing. I mean, that's something that I can't relate to at all. And it sounds like writing has really just offered you that opportunity to process, I guess, a lot of those experiences. And I guess living through such a range of places, and such a wide array of experiences, and taking on so many cultures and so many colors and the people around you, I guess that really plays into your writing, because in a lot of your pieces that I've seen, perhaps most famously in Love Letters to Palestine, you take on the role of other characters. Do you feel that this is because you're able to empathize given your experiences, and does it help you to write from a position of empathy, knowing where you've come from?
What a beautiful question, Alex. Thank you. It's I feel like empathy definitely plays into it. And also it allows me to tap into, Love Letters from Palestine is perhaps the first poem in which I kind of really intentionally fused these two forms, one of which being spoken word and the other solo performance monologue. So, and that came out of a limitation. The limitation was my own experience. Somebody asked me to present a poem about Palestine at a fundraiser. And I thought I'd like to write something new. But, I've only been to Palestine at that point. I had only been in 1997. I wrote this in 2012. And I felt like my experience was too limited for Dana to write a poem about Palestine. I thought, who can tell the story better than I can? And so I created the character of the Hajj, who Hajj in Arabic, it means like the old woman who's gone to do Hajj, which is the pilgrimage, so it's like the wise woman. And this Hajj was born on the day of the Nakba, which is, of course, when Israel declared independence within Palestine, and many Palestinians fled and were displaced, and then lost their houses and homes, and many villages were taken over. So she was born on that day, and she has lived the history of the conflict. And I thought that through her voice, I can tell a story that is much bigger than Dana and Dana's experience. And in that, I found like a key, because getting out of myself and into a character, I can really allow myself to see things from different perspectives. And so that's always a prompt whenever I'm teaching writing. It's kind of like a key that I give people. What's an issue that you care about deeply and you want to talk about? But how can we approach this, not from your personal perspective, but from the perspective of an unlikely witness? And so that's what I tried to offer in Love Letters from Palestine. And yeah, I think definitely it creates empathy, because it's not just me, it becomes a universal essence, that's speaking.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because having myself typed poetry for people on issues that perhaps I feel like my experience is limited on. What I've always, and I like to perform my poetry, but I perform my poetry more as a caricature of myself, as opposed to a different character entirely. And so whenever I'm writing about something I don't fully understand, my sort of clause, what I always put my disclaimer, I'm ignorant on this subject. I don't know enough about this subject. So whatever comes out, I'm sorry. But I think what you're saying is that by taking on a different character, you can make your view much more expansive, and actually add legitimacy to your opinions, which you can showcase through others, which I think is a wonderful thing. So I'm actually learning a lot. As you were talking, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like maybe I should
You know why, Alex? Because nobody can argue with a story. You know what I mean? No
Yeah,
one can argue with this story. It's like, this is this woman's story. No one can argue with it. But by virtue of the fact that it's a story, we feel, we empathize, we put ourselves in that person's shoes if we allow ourselves to go that far. We can't argue with someone else's experience. And even if it is a symbolic character, there's weight in the symbol of the character, you know?
yeah, I absolutely love that. It means that we can create a world and put forward our opinions on the world without that fear, which of course happens quite regularly at the moment. Like, oh, you're not in a position to talk about this. You're not in a position to talk about this.
Exactly.
And yeah, you're just amplifying not only other people's voices, but your own voice as well, which is great. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, I'm learning quite a lot at the moment. Um, it's really great to see as well, like just how passionate you are about what you do. Like everything that you say, everything is just fully fueled by passion and endeavor and drive and a willingness and a desire to really just showcase who you are. And from watching a lot of your stuff on YouTube recently, a desire to actually improve the world and create a fairer world for people, which is wonderful. And one of the reasons that Poems by Post was actually created was because we're so enamored by the endeavor and the passion that people put into their craft, the drive that people and the hard work that people put into pursuing a dream is just, I think, incredibly inspiring. So that's one of the reasons that we exist. And over the past year, so a recent poem of yours that I watched was Caged Bird, which was the culmination of a year's worth of work, or over a year's worth of work. It actually started pre-pandemic, if I'm correct in
Just
thinking.
before the pandemic, yeah.
And it's a collaboration between yourself and your partner Rami, and it's beautiful. I'd encourage everyone to go and watch Caged Bird on Red Zone Festival. I will stick a link somewhere so that people can find it.
Great, thanks.
But how does it feel to have put so much effort and so much heart and energy into something over the course of a year and then see it go out to sort of where it's supposed to be?
Well, it feels really good. You know, because my background is in the theater, I focus my time and energy on live events because that's where I feel good. I feel good when I'm connecting with people and you can feel the energy change in a room. And because I'm always doing these live shows, I didn't always have the greatest documentation of my poems because in a space you feel it, you're moved by it. But when someone's filming a live show and it doesn't have all the bells and whistles of like a fully formed visual, like made for the screen product, it can feel bare. The performances felt really bare. And so I had the intention before the pandemic to really put a lot of effort into making productions of my poetry. I want to make it for the screen. It's not just about a stage performance. How do I translate that with music and with color and with shape and image? So just before the pandemic, it was Feb 2020, Rami came to Amman where we had access to a green screen. Tara Abu Dughad Studios is the space, and they really kindly patron my work and said, whatever you want, the space is yours. So Rami and I went in with like total experimenter's mind. We chose some poems that I don't usually perform on stage so that I'm not already limited with the presentation. And we wanted to film them and see what we could create together from scratch. So we actually had a very minimal storyboard going in. We didn't have the whole thing planned. We had some kind of images of what we might work with. And so we filmed that in February. It was 2 days of a shoot, and we filmed 3 things. Caged Bird is just one of them.
Ah, cool. That's exciting.
Yeah, but it took us the whole year to work on the graphic design to bring it to life. And it feels, the whole process of creating together, we found a groove because we've made other things together that are actually like filmed live action, but animation takes a lot of time. So yeah, it feels really great to have it out. And at some point, you can always add and keep improving, but at some point you feel like, okay, this is I've got to stop here. I can share this, I can get it out there. So that feels really good.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. One of my favorite writers of all time is Dan Harmon. I don't know if you know Dan Harmon. He writes Community and Rick and Morty. Um,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, brilliant writer. And one of the things that he says, and it's something that I think a lot of creative people sort of have to take on board, is I don't fully mean this, but he says it doesn't have to be good. It just has to exist.
Mhm.
And I think what he means by that is, as a creative person, like you say, you know, this is something that you've worked on for a year, and yet you can still see, like, I want it to be this, and I want it to be this, and we're always looking to up our standard.
Mhm.
But actually, there comes a point, as you say, we have to go, right, it's ready. It's time for other people to see it. And how have you found the reaction to Caged Bird since releasing it?
It's good. It won Best Animation at a different film festival, Dreamers Short Film Festival. I think it now goes into a global thing. And then we got a review. We got our first review, which is good. And yeah, the feedback on Red Zone has been awesome as well. And we're just trying to push it out to more film festivals because it really was something that took such a chunk of time. And we had other projects within that chunk that we turned around. We had maybe 5 other films that we made while we were still working on this one. So it was something like we left and came back to, and for that it didn't feel right just posting it directly to YouTube. It felt like, okay, we want to kind of get this out into the festival circuit. Also because I'm not quite sure about social media, for example, Instagram, maybe YouTube a bit more, but Instagram is definitely not the platform for long form poetry. You know, people don't want to watch it. They're scrolling. They're watching something that's a minute, maybe even less. You know, we've gotten, there's like Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, and our attention span is just it cut shorter and shorter. And I refuse to bite size my stories. You know, I tell these longer form stories so you can really travel somewhere with your imagination, feel something, come out changed a little bit. It's hard to do that in 6 seconds, you know?
Yeah, you don't want to compromise the message that you want to share for the sake of fitting it into the box which various social media platforms will inevitably put you into.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
how,
film festivals are more of a suitable format because people are there to watch something, you know,
yeah,
they're there, they have the attention span, they're coming to really receive something within that format, which is why I feel like it's much, it was a good avenue for Caged Bird, at least, you know.
yeah, I can definitely see why you've done it. I've not got a lot of experience with submitting to film festivals, but I can understand that. And perhaps eventually, you know, or at some point, you'll be able to share it on YouTube and then reach even more eyes, which would be great. And how have so I know, going back to sort of what you said at the beginning regarding the filming of Caged Bird, you spoke about the fact that sort of performance poetry without the bells and whistles of the stage. It was something that you wanted to create something that could capture that same sort of magic that you do get whilst performing on the stage. And how do you feel? Do you feel that you've captured that magic?
Yeah, even beyond that magic, because we could start to play with the visuals way more than I could ever convey on the stage. And that's perhaps why I'd never done that poem on stage, because it felt like it needed so much more to bring it to life. Like the music automatically gives the poem an attitude,
Yeah.
and then also a set and setting and an era. And on a stage, you know, I'm performing 5, 6, 7, depending on how long my set is, but I'm performing a few poems after the other. So I usually have a scarf, and the scarf I'll, you know, change characters with the scarf. But I thought Caged Bird needs like this glass box cage, and we use the Kew Garden Conservatory as inspiration, and you know, we just really let our visual imagination take it way bigger than even the story could convey in just through language.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we were successful by my account.
Yeah, I mean, from the first like few seconds of watching it, but you say that music just gives it that attitude. I felt like I was transported to like a burlesque club where I could just imagine somebody sort of wearing like a feather scarf and smoking like a silver tipped cigarette and just that
Yeah.
cool music. And, yeah, it was very effective in that transportation to another world, which I think is what you want from video, from film, from poetry, from entertainment. You want that escapism, and I definitely found that it offered escapism, which yeah, I'm completely in love with Cage Bird. I thought it was brilliant.
So one note about that we got in this review, the review that was done on the film, was that they didn't understand the aesthetic of the pages and the books and the papers and the writing. For me, okay, you know, typically we see this like stereotype of the kept woman as someone who's like bejeweled and bedecked, and fine, she has this wealth, let's say, but her values are not to have things but experiences. And so she reads, but as much as she reads, she's still trapped and contained where she is. And so all of this knowledge without experience is impotent. You know what I mean? All of this knowledge, as much as you prepare and inform yourself, if you're not out there applying it in the world, what are you doing? So for me, that's where the aesthetic came in, not just because, you know, I find paper beautiful, but because that is also rooted in the message. And I found that I think the critic missed that point. He didn't quite get the connection.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't say that either. I didn't. I enjoyed the aesthetic, but I didn't read deeper into it. But it's really nice to sort of now and oh, cool. There's some that's what Dana and Rami were portraying. And it's really nice to have that added element. So I'm looking forward to watching it back now, having spoken to you and having a bit more of a deeper understanding of what it was, of what it is that you're conveying. And it's a great performance. It is a wonderful performance. Everything, I think it just comes together so nicely. And you've performed in many great venues all around the world, including the Sydney Opera House and the Guggenheim in Bilbao. I read somewhere that one of the places that you want to perform in, that you desire to perform in, is the Globe. Is this something that you've managed to achieve since?
Not yet.
Still on the list?
It's still very much on the list. Now that I'm relocating a bit more to the UK, and I mean, I hope to pursue it. I definitely do. I think if it doesn't happen while I'm here, it's definitely something I'm not going to give up on for life. It's such an icon to me, and Shakespeare is such an inspiration to me. Really, I think fell in love with language and theater as an art form through Shakespeare's work. And I'm just so impressed also at the fact that he created words. You know, I don't think that's it's not a liberty that we take enough. And he was so playful with language, and that's why he has such a legacy. So
yeah, it's interesting because sort of in Shakespeare's day, theatre was very much entertainment for everybody. You know, it was so accessible to the masses, and that's something that still permeates through the culture of the Globe. You know, despite how iconic it is and how prestigious a place it is, they still sell tickets for £5. So it's so accessible to the public. Is that something that you find quite drawing about the Globe as a venue?
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, yes, we have these like cultural icons: Sydney Opera House, Guggenheim, Bilbao, the Globe. They're you know, immortal in their legacy. They're global cultural icons. But the fact that the Globe hasn't lost its roots, neither of these venues, I should say, have. They're very much, you know, as epic as they are, they're grassroots oriented as well. And so that was my experience, at least in Australia and in Bilbao. And so I feel that would definitely be echoed at the Globe, because it should be for the masses. You know, it's always been for the masses. We gathered in arenas in ancient Greece to watch theater and to debate politics and to watch sports also after the fact. But originally the theaters were used for theater and politics. And so we go into the theater to feel something together and to learn something together. And that was like the point of the early tragedies and comedies, is to kind of test our, moral compass within a context and learn together, so we don't have to each learn from the experience ourselves. And this is a ritual that I don't think will ever die. We need this coming together. We need to be in the space to feel something together, to know we're not alone.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to be able to share connectivity with your fellow man, fellow woman, just fellow people. And theatre and entertainment is definitely something that brings that connectivity. And the accessibility, as you say, has always been for the masses. However, politics seems to have been slightly, just my opinion, veering away from the masses. Not in terms of the discussion. The discussion is still there, but the ability to do something, the ability to enforce change and for the greater good. And one of your poems, "If I Were President," is a fantastic showcase of this. And look, this is what I think, and this is what I feel, and it's so beautifully done, with so many points in there that I believe the majority of people, share that feeling with you. Do you think that, given that the relationship between theatre and politics, do you think politics is something that you're going to move towards at some point in your career?
Yes, only recently, really, and I'll tell you in what capacity. I think now is the time for poets and not politicians. I think that we have, like, good leadership is rooted in spirit, is rooted in essence. It comes from a heart place. It doesn't come from a place of force or dominance. It comes from like deep understanding and care. And I think that that's also the same root of poetry. It comes from a heart place. It comes from a place of wanting to understand and to somehow mend, or make sense of. Whereas the politics of today has nothing to do with this space. It doesn't even have anything to do with this space. It has to do with pocketbooks, like it really has to do with socio-economic, geopolitical. It's not about serving the self. It's not about serving the masses. It's about serving very few who sit high on top. And so I hope that in this new decade that we are in, that we will see a move to elect more leaders who do speak from that heart space. And so one of the things that I might be doing soon, I hope, it's a seed that I planted a few months ago, and I hope now you see like starting to bloom, but to go and be something called like a keynote listener at conferences, UNHCR, UNRWA, and kind of be there as a creative scribe to take notes of what is said in these spaces and then transmit it back to the audience members or transmit it back to the public. This is what was there, but to tell that story from this heart space, to not record it like a journalist who's like recording the conference, to kind of echo back the spirit really that everything is infused with. So that's the space I want to be in. I want to be someone who speaks to the heart, from the heart, and that inspires others to work towards the betterment of our world from that space.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful thing. And it's one thing that you just said that I really loved is the world needs poets right now, not politicians. That's such an amazing sentence, and I'm in complete agreement with you there. I used to write poetry on the streets. I used to sit on the street with a typewriter and just write poetry for people as they would pass by. And I did it in Australia, funnily enough. And an encounter that I had a couple of years ago, whilst I was sitting there typing away on my typewriter, just writing for whoever would like a poem, a man came up to me. No introduction, just comes up to me and he says, "Keep doing what you're doing." He said, "Poets are the voice of the streets." And then just off he went. And it was just that. What you're doing, poets are the voice of the streets, and it ties in so nicely with what you just said. The world needs poets, not politicians. It needs that empathy that we was talking about at the beginning when you put yourself into other characters' shoes. It needs that understanding, it needs that listening there, and it also needs that communication from the heart to the heart, as you so eloquently put it. So yeah, I think that's really exciting. I mean, I'd love to see you in politics, much more than the majority of the politicians that we currently have. I think it'd be really exciting if you was in politics. And another thing, it would be another great thing to add to a very impressive and wide varying CV, which is available publicly on your website. You have some very unusual skills on there. It says that you're trained in rapier, dagger, katana, and shamsi. First question.
Which, for anyone who's listening, they're swords. It's sword work. It's sword fighting. So, what was your question?
So, I've got a few questions on this. The main one is, how often do you get to use these skills?
The answer is not often enough. Definitely, it was part of my training in theater school, the rapier and dagger training, and unarmed hand-to-hand combat. And so you learn like masking and napping, and you learn how to hide the fight, make it safe. And then I was part of a kung fu series in college called Kung Fu Johnny, and it was like really one of the first web series, apparently. I don't know. We ended up being published in a book because we're cited as like one of the first kind of web series that got online. Weird. But so Kung Fu Johnny was the name of the web series, and I was a character in this series, but I was also the makeup artist. So I did all the gore makeup in the shoot, and I also had a character who fought with a katana, which is a Japanese samurai sword. So I learned for that in particular. And then I did another show called Sinbad the Untold Tale, and I played the legendary Sinbad's daughter, Ittifa, who goes on an adventure with a new young Sinbad. And so we had to do shamshir for that show, and we also did rapier and dagger for that show. So the last time I had to do combat, I feel like I've had one more recently though. But not often enough, Sometimes I get a script where there is like a big fight, and I think, yeah, that's it. Like I get to put some of these skills to work. But I don't remember really if there was what the last one was off the top of my head.
That's pretty cool though. You're doing your own stunts. Writer, performer, poet, politician, stunt woman.
Stunt woman.
Yeah, I mean, wow. There's some accolades there. Highly impressive.
Thank you. It's good. I like to dip my finger into everything. I feel like it's really important, especially today. You really have to be, we call them like multi-hyphenates. This dash that. But like to have, on the other hand, there's this phrase, the jack of all trades, the master of none. But I really feel like it gives you, the more that you can really put your hand into different pots, the more you A, really know what you like, and B, you have experience and influence from other things around you that can encourage you to look at that thing that you know that you like from a different perspective that nobody's ever really seen before. So I do let myself kind of get distracted along many different paths.
Yeah, that's a thought process that I definitely share with you. And jack of all trades, master of none is something that gets thrown around a fair bit. I prefer jack of all trades, master of some. I think that's better. It's a nicer way of putting it.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So I have loved talking to you. It's been fascinating. It's been really fascinating, really interesting. You're an incredible woman, and I am.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Huge fan. Even more so after talking to you. I mean, I was before, but now after talking, it's just reiterated her. Yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you. The pleasure's been mine, and really so excited to see all the work you're doing with Poems by Post, and to know that people are getting these words sent to them directly, whether on paper or in their email. It's really important to keep poetry alive, and I really admire the work that you're doing. So thank you for having me as your featured poet.
No, it's been a pleasure. We're really excited to have you, and yeah, thanks for taking the time to talk to us, Dana.
My pleasure. Catch you soon.